quick confession before we start. When I first started exploring cybersecurity, my honest thought was this feels intimidating. Acronyms everywhere, everyone sounds smarter than me, and somehow everyone already knows what a CISO wants. So, if you're a product marketer listening right now, cybersecurity sounds interesting, but also kind of terrifying, then you are not alone. I was right there too, and that's exactly why this episode exists. Welcome to Behind the Brief, and this is for PMMs who want to work in cybersecurity, are already in it, or are being pulled into it and are trying to figure out how to actually survive and succeed in this space. Today's guest doesn't really need an intro. Sachin has already been on this podcast before, and after that conversation, both of us felt the same thing. We barely touched the surface of cybersecurity. Sachin has spent over a decade building and scaling go-to-market systems across cybersecurity, cloud, dev tools, and now AI, working hands-on with early-stage and growth companies. He's firsthand seen where GTM breaks, where PMM struggle, and why cybersecurity feels so different from other SaaS markets. So instead of doing one-off podcast episodes, we decided to do this properly. Sachin, welcome to my show. I'm really excited on how we are going to deep dive into cybersecurity and everything a bit technical, boring, but yes, very important right now.
Yeah, awesome. Amazing. And thank you so much for having me again. I didn't think that I'll come on a podcast second time. But yeah, thank you so much for having me again. And yeah, topic that we are doing today is like cybersecurity that both of us can talk like endless things, but we'll try to make it meaningful.
Absolutely. And this series is us slowing down and focusing only on the cybersecurity market, how it's structured, how buyers think, where PMMs add value, and where they can often get tripped. Sachin shares a lot of insights on his LinkedIn. These episodes are going to be very detailed. I am Shruti, product marketer and your host. And today we are starting right at the foundation. Sachin, can we start with the bigger picture here? Like when people say cybersecurity market, PMMs often imagine a giant blob, but in reality, it's fragmented, it's emotional, buyer driven in very specific ways. So, if a PMM is entering cybersecurity today, how would they mentally model this market?
So yeah, many things in that. And this would be a great place to start. I would say if someone starts thinking from this angle, right? Like mental model and other structure, that's a great place to start because I think the biggest mental shift as a product marketer that we need, especially the cybersecurity world, is you need to think that cybersecurity is not one market. It's a collection of, I say that emotional, I mean, many markets are emotional, but here I don't see many people playing around this. So cybersecurity is not one market. It's a collection of fear-driven micro markets. And if you start seeing that from that angle, like each category, right, in like today's world exists because something was broken before, something was breached, there was a security breach happened, a leadership got scared. Uber's CISO was fired, if I remember, when he was on vacation, okay, because a security breach happened and all that. So instead of thinking in terms of like TAM and like total addressable markets or segments and all, I would kind of model this in my mental map that okay, this exists because someone was scared, something broke and all that, right? Now if you answer that, okay, what went wrong, right? So was it a security breach? Was it a compliance pressure? Was it a cloud sprawl or a AI risk these days, right? Or the AI security risk in that terms? Then second, that was the first thing. The second thing is, again, since it's an emotional driven market, just ask basic simple questions like who lost sleep because of it? Okay. So sometimes it's a CISO. Sometimes it's the engineering leader, like a security engineer, like a DevSecOps engineer or something. Sometimes it's the board of directors and all that, right? And then the third part is again like, okay, what moment triggered the entire budget, right? So it can be a breach again, an audit, or a customer escalation or something. Right? Now, so cybersecurity, again, if you divide it into micro markets, so take it in terms of emotional driven thing, reactive things, and then the timing driven thing. So if you as a product marketer can model the market around the problem moments, emotional buying instead of features and bucket that, okay, basically this was like a email marketing domain. How do I compete with the market? Instead of that, start thinking from not from the TAM, but from the micro market segmentation perspective, right? That's how you should be taking a look at the cybersecurity right now. Otherwise, there are 5,000 companies and you'll be like in a messed up state.
Yeah? Right. So can we focus a little bit, like even to this time, cybersecurity feels very fragmented, and it's not like a new field that everybody is exploring. Why does it feel so fragmented these days? Even now, like after people spending so much time in cybersecurity, why does it still feel so fragmented?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good comparison to have. It is actually because, see, cybersecurity, I tell this to people that cybersecurity doesn't grow linearly, okay? It grows with reactions and emotional things that we try to answer in the first one, right? It's basically like, don't think it from a linear thing that something happened and it's not a retail thing that's going to happen, right? So every time the technology changes, security fragments again, right? So what happens is, say, we got cloud adoption, cloud got in like a lot of new risk. DevOps came in, so DevOps got in a lot of new risk. And open source started gaining momentum and things like that with developer audience. So it started getting the thing. Now that's the same thing with AI and other things, right? So AI is blowing up. So it's kind of opening up the entire new thing again. What looks like the fragmentation is actually the risk following the innovation type of thing, right? So the most important takeaway comes that, okay, the categories don't exist because someone wanted to start a company, right? They kind of exist because buyers could manage the risk. They couldn't manage the risk with what they already had. So if you like understand why any of these category were born, like, right, like email or any kind of thing, so you should understand from the three perspective, like what is the urgency, what is the emotional driver for me, and then what is the defensive moment for me, right? So again, if you're going from the angle of SaaS, you would go from the angle of features and all these things. But here, if you go with the features, so people in this AI cybersecurity world have been having this similar kind of features and all. So we cannot have that play. So we need to have a structure on how urgent your problem is. Can you solve the problem of AI risk right now? Or are you like the thousand other vendors? Emotionally, how can you nag me? And how can you be more defensive and open about anything that the other new vendors can't come in, right? Suppose I'm Microsoft or Zoom or any of these story, right? Now from the SaaS end, I would like always think in a linear thing, but when we think about cybersecurity, it's not only my security as Microsoft or Zoom or something, because it's my security as first party. And what about the third party apps that I'm using? What about my fourth party apps that my third parties are using, right? So say suppose it can be Okta, it can be anything else, it can be many tools, Salesforce. If so, the biggest breach that happened with United Healthcare, that happened because of a subsidiary called Change Healthcare was broken. So breached, right? So it can happen with third party apps, it can happen with anything. So you need to understand that you cannot think linear in cybersecurity. So that's the main difference that I kind of find here in terms of growing and the fragmented and this cybersecurity market versus the SaaS market, right? So you need to start understanding that.
Right. So I just want to go back to the basics, and I would have loved if somebody explained it to me in a very simpler manner, right? So, how would you explain cybersecurity landscape to a PMM friend over coffee, or just, casually chatting with them and making them understand what exactly cybersecurity consists of? What are the things, what are the takeaways, and like how would you just simply break it down? Because I always wanted somebody to actually tell me this is how this field is, but I landed in cybersecurity just on my toes, and I was just supposed to start doing positioning and messaging for it. But like, I would love for you to explain, like, how would you break it down to a PMM friend?
Yeah, I mean, more than a PMM friend, I think I would kind of love to have someone do a simplification for me, because it's getting more and more complex.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would keep it very simple. That I would say that, okay, the cybersecurity, if you want to simplify, just think from the angle of three questions. If you can answer these three questions, you'll try understanding what's the thing, right? First and foremost thing is, what do we have? What do we have as a company, as a person, right? So we will have assets, we will have identities, we'll have software, we'll have data, we have AI models. All of these can be breached. So what do we have? We have all these things, and this is one of the segments, right? Then the second can be, what could go wrong? What could go wrong is misconfigurations, misuse of your credentials. You can have an attack. You can have identities being breached and all that, right? So what could go wrong? There can be many things going wrong. Your third parties can get breached. Your fourth parties, your employees' laptop can get stolen, your credentials and all. So what could go wrong? So these are the categories that come in. So here you'll have TPRM players, you'll have third-party risk players, you'll have a misconfiguration like the exposure management players and all that, right? That's how this entire categories were created. And the third simple thing, I would ask my friend to do it like, okay, now that you have understood what do we have, what could go wrong, think that what happens if it does? What's the impact? What's the financial loss? Is it in monetization or is it in regulatory fines? If you have a damage, do you have to pay the US government some kind of thing, right? Then is it the brand damage, which is the emotional thing that comes out of that? Will I have a breach and people will stop doing this, stop trusting me and all? Then as an employee, it can be a job risk, right? So financial losses, regulatory buckets. That's how simple it could be. Like, what do we have? I have an asset or identity or a software. What could go wrong and what happens if it does, right? So technically, if you see the entire landscape of the cybersecurity, right, you can have products come in this three buckets. Initially, I've seen the PMMs who are coming in, or even me, right? I started memorizing the category names. Okay, email security, domain security, your CRQs of the world, and then TPRMs and SaaS, SSPMs, ASPMs. I started memorizing the category names, but when someone started asking me that, okay, but what is ASPM? What is SSPM? Like, can you try me? And then I started understanding that, okay, if you could ask these questions in these three buckets, right? So then I would be like, okay, if I have a software that gets breached, and I provide security for that, I'm like a SSPM player. But if it is like a application security that I'm doing, I might be a AppSec player and all that. So that's how we started looking at things. And this, if you could simplify, and this simplicity is not for explaining. What we should remember is, as a product marketer, if we can simplify to this level, that's when we could actually go and position our product as well better, right? Otherwise, we'll be all this category playing only that, okay, I'm an SSPM provider, I fall in this, and these are my competitors, and this is what I'll be doing. But how do you tell a story? Are you like better than SSPMs? Are you better than the ASPMs? Are you kind of trying to define your category? So that's the structure I look at. I hope that answers your question, Shruti. And I was trying to be as simple as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's how you would actually, I think that's how even any PMM can understand. If you just simply start understanding through the differentiators, know what field you are in, what category, what, players you are actually competing with. I think that's pretty clear. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that. I want to move on to another question for anybody starting in this space. Like, we all know that one of the biggest PMM mistakes I have seen, and I think we all see that assuming the user is the buyer, but in cybersecurity specifically, I don't think that assumption actually stays afloat. So who actually buys cybersecurity products and who influences the decision? Because I think if we are talking about how PMMs think about and should think about in this category, what is the way to understand who is the buyer, who influences the decision making process, and like everything? I think that's a very PMM centric question, and I definitely want the audience to like think it in this perspective as well.
Yeah, I think this is where the entire cybersecurity completely break this entire, I would say, the traditional product marketing thinking, because the user is rarely the buyer. I mean, this is true for many other categories as well. And there are two views in this structure, right, that I've seen with my experience. The first thing is, say, let's take an example, right? Like, okay, so here engineers are feeling the pain, we can say that. And then security teams evaluate the tools and all. But the buyer is usually the person who is owning the risk. Okay. See, whose job will go? A security engineer or the CISO? The CISO will lose his job, right? Because his entire job is to protect the company. But if there is a risk or a breach happening, the CIO, the CISO is responsible for this, right? So person who owns the risk is the CISO, the CIO, or even the CFO or a board director, right? Like depending on the deal size and all that. And the influence usually comes from everywhere. Say the engineer saying that this will slow us down. The compliance will say that will fall the audit. And sales will keep saying that, okay, this could block the deals and all that. So technically, instead of seeing horizontally, like vertically, people should start seeing it horizontally, right? So think from the angle that you're not selling like one story, and you're trying to align multiple fears, incentive, and success metrics, right? Say a simple example would be that I can suppose I'm an application security player or anyone in the third party risk management space or something. I know that I can have this application security engineers. I can message for them. I can try to have my user there and other structure. But my ultimate, who is my buyer above that, and after that, who is the ultimate buyer is the CISO. But the second part of the story comes in is I cannot write much about CISOs because it's a saturated market. Like it is not even saturated, it's oversaturated. All the messaging is around CISOs. All the cybersecurity things that you'd see is they would say that the best platform that's trying to target the CISOs, everything is around either CISO or the CISO minus one. So you cannot play with that also. So it's basically like you kind of message to the middle layer. Like say suppose if it is AI, if I'm trying to sell something like a AI security platform, like how prompt or the homegrown or the developer buyers, right? So I would say that what's my biggest threat? First, my biggest threat in a company is a employee using something like ChatGPT or Gamma or any other AI tool. So if I'm trying to protect AI as a security means, I would just think from employee angle and developers angle, right? So you have employee tools like ChatGPT and all, developer tools like cursors and all these things. So can I have a product? If I have a AI security product, I would focus on the pain point of these buyers. If someone is sitting like a AI security engineer and if he's trying to write a code with cursor, first thing would be from the top end, the CISO's worry would be if the code, like the entire app is secure. But from his end, it will be like the code that you have written, is it secure or not? How do you know that, right? So if you message it like this from the user and the buyer perspective, that's when you can balance out the entire cybersecurity method, right? So you should know where the product falls, whom to target, and then how do you message that in this very highly oversaturated CISO market, right? So that's why I was telling that this entire market. That's why a lot of product marketers I see struggling, and not even the product marketers. So I entire agency based thing, right? You can hire a consultant who has been in cybersecurity and product marketing for like 15 years, but even they are struggling in terms of this entire thing, in terms of product marketing, in terms of GTM engineering, in terms of doing end-to-end GTM, because the entire market is getting saturated with the user versus the buyer deal. So how do you kind of try to tell this story, right? That's the entire structure. And this entirely needs a breakthrough thinking. That's how you as a product marketer can come into this market, make a difference and do it. If you're coming with an old playbook and you think that I'm a PMM and I'm gonna come in this field and say that I'm gonna follow some older product marketing playbook that worked in some other domain or even in cybersecurity, better luck next time, because that's not gonna work. I think it's time for you to find another domain, right? Because it's messed up. So we'll need some kind of different thinking. Like in DevTools, we say that if you go to KubeCon, you'll see the same message that we are the best cloud platform or a Kubernetes platform and will reduce your cost and all that. Cost optimization, and these have become common messaging in DevTools. So it's same thing in cybersecurity. It's either very CISO focused or either very technical in features, but no one is trying to go with the emotional angle. What happens if a breach happens, right? I can lose my job as a CISO. And then what happens to that engineer who is trying to do something, right? So if you can start thinking from that angle and have a different story to tell, that's when you can build your thing, right? And it's okay to go simple.
Yeah. So I'll just share one personal experience, because you just shared like having storytelling within the internal teams, you can actually gain their trust as a product marketer. So my personal story here is like I struggled a lot to enable the founder to even understand that we need emotional storytelling. Whatever they worked on the website before I joined, it was very dry. It didn't talk to the user, it was just simply stating what the product does. So I had a hard time explaining to the founder that it's not storytelling. It's not telling what it should be telling right now and how it will be more relevant. If you are selling it to a CISO, then it should be selling it to the CISO.
Yeah.
And I think it becomes even more complicated if you are not from a long lost cybersecurity background. They don't take your voice seriously. So that's what I have
Yeah.
faced. Like personally, that has been my biggest problem. And no matter how many videos you watch about cybersecurity, you know all the terms, you can just, ratify it, but it still doesn't matter. That's a bigger problem to tackle when it comes. And that's something that you should be really prepared for if you really want to be in this field or succeed in cybersecurity. So, yes, what
Yeah,
you
not
said
only.
has triggered my own
Yeah.
personal story.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that, because that also triggered. I mean, I can speak about this for another half an hour, but it's basically like many of these, see, not even beyond cybersecurity. So cybersecurity needs this storytelling right now, but even beyond cybersecurity, you can actually succeed as a PMM if you have this storytelling thing. And many times, things will get messier. It'll be in positioning and all these calls with the founders. See, founders have a vision, right? And that vision will be reflected in the messaging. Say, I would say that I want a safe AI adoption across the company. That's a vision. That's not messaging. So if I put that on homepage, I need to tell that I'm an AI security platform so that people know that I'm a Gen AI security platform rather than this, right? So many a times it gets messier. I know it. But I think storytelling and these shift is needed.
Very much needed, yes. Okay, so anyways, I have been talking about my mistakes as a PMM in this field, but let's talk about when PMM comes from traditional B2B SaaS into cyber, where do they usually stumble? Like do you have any personal stories that also resonate with that? I'm just like trying to continue our conversation based on the topic we just discussed.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about it, I think compared to the SaaS, I would say two big places. The first thing could be people try to over-educate on things, right? Like, and under reassure things. Like, if you take an example in the cybersecurity space, so buyers don't want to feel smarter. To be frank, no one wants to be smarter in this cybersecurity world. They want to feel safer. Am I safe? That's the whole intention of this cybersecurity domain, right? So if I talk about AI, cyber, and give you like all these technical terms and give you that in 10 years, I'm going to do all this agentic thing and all those things, that will not matter to you unless you know deep down in the thing that, okay, will this make me safer? Will this hold my company, right? And so that's the first thing that I see. And this is very common in SaaS, that people play with features and not this. Here, that's the same thing that they try to repeat, that they play with smarter things in cybersecurity, that we are some XYZ things and will try to detect and get these threads and threats and all mapped. And we have this map that will show you the world map of where your existing assets exist and all those things. But that's okay, but what do I do with seeing the map? Like as a CISO or as a person who is buying your tool, my first question, and you should answer that as a product, is, will I be safer, right? So that's the thing that you need to start pulling out, the thing that, okay, once you install or once you get my product, the first thing that we make you do is you're going to be in safer hands. Okay. Now, the second thing I think I've seen is more around, they use more like, they assume the logic drivers as like the decisions, right? Whereas the entire industry would not run in logic, but entirely on the emotional fit, right? So it's basically like in the reality, the cyber security buying will be more emotional. So connecting to the first one, right? And logical second. So messaging playing on fear of breach is more important. Fear of being blamed is important. Fear of missing something is important, right? The best cybersecurity PMMs that I've seen, they kind of play around with these kind of emotions, right? They acknowledge that, they normalize it. They have a balance between the logic and this thing. They would also say that, okay, first of all, you're safe. And how you're safe? It's because of these things that we do, XYZ things, right?
Right.
And that's how you need to break your muscle. First of all, see, especially when someone is coming from something like a very technical SaaS, no, dev tools, what happens is, let's take an example of watching the movie, right? So in movie storytelling, how it happens is people would do storytelling, and then people would like the entire movie builds the background, does the storytelling, and then gets the characters and then adds up the thing. But what happens in a technical SaaS thing or something, you have to tell the developers and all that will this thing be useful? Once you have gained that confidence, then you do 100 storytelling, doesn't matter. Okay. Because then it's the budget owner, right? You need to get the thing. Similar thing here. You need to have a balance. First thing, Just tell them if they are safe. Then you do all the technical thing, it's important and all that. And then again, you do the storytelling, which is like more from the CISO perspective, buying decisions and all that. So
Right.
technical and logic is important, but first you have to make sure that this entire thing was developed because I can save your SaaS application, I can save your applications, and I can safeguard your identities, your passwords, and things like that.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's the entire mind shift or this entire mistakes that I've kind of seen, at least the two big places that I see here in terms of cyber, right?
Right. Yeah, I think one of them I've definitely committed. Like, didn't start with making the messaging to be more secure, your product, you are secure with us, and that kind of messaging. So, definitely, that was one thing that I realized over time by looking at competitors. How are they actually positioning themselves? And some are actually doing a really great work. I do have a list of competitors and I do have that market landscape that we were discussing a couple of minutes ago. So I'll definitely
Yeah.
share everything within this video or link everything in the description so that people can actually go and visit what we are talking about. What are the things that we are discussing in detail? But we can't do cybersecurity in just one episode, is what I've realized. It's so I cannot end this episode without talking about AI because that's what everybody keeps talking about. So both in terms of threats and products, how do you think AI is impacting, and what do you think are some things that PMM should be focusing on? I know this field needs you to, like, it demands you to be on toes about the latest threats, latest attacks that are happening. How do we keep up with all the information that's going on, and how is it changing the entire market?
Yeah. Yeah. So
I just
first
asked
in
10 questions in one.
yeah, but I could only hear AI. So that's good. Because the thing is, as I was telling the example, right, in any of the conference, when you're standing in any DevTools conference, you'll see all these common messaging around Kubernetes and cloud. So that's the same thing with cybersecurity right now. All the messaging where CISO, now AI has been added, right?
Yeah,
Like we are the AI security tool, we are the AI TPRM tool or something like that. But the other end is if you don't jump on that bus, you're also like left behind. Everything is AI.
exactly.
Like everyone is building like 10, 10 agents while you're still on Excel sheets and managing the third parties.
Right.
People have already made like agents which can do end-to-end security things, right? So just answering your question, doing two things at the same time, right? Like you asked from the threat side and from the product
Product
side,
side.
right? So from the threat side, AI is making life easier for the attackers because it lowers the skill barrier for the attacker. Like more attacks, more attack surfaces, more automation, the more the surface area. It's getting easier and easier for them to try attacking the thing because the surface area is increasing. You can see that like a cricket pitch or something, and it's getting easier for them. On the product side, it's getting overwhelming for the buyers with the tools that all sounds like similar. Okay. So it's just crazy right now in terms of product side. First, at one point, it's happening that it's getting easier to attack. Attacks are increasing. And on the other side, people like trying to get products, but everything sounds similar, right? So it's our job as like product marketers and developer marketers to get into this thing and how to position your product, how to tell your story, how can you position harder, right, not easier. So this will be for this entire structure, right? So as a PMM, you need to go with less hypes and you need to start structuring. I know marketing can be fancier and all this, but as I say, we are more closer to the product than the marketing side. We are the product marketers, so we need to start understanding. So if everyone is trying to sound similar, how can you go from the normal messaging of AI powered to giving the real meaning of why you are AI powered, right? Also using balancing and using the tools in terms of AI, like if suppose you say that you're an AI security platform and you hold up the entire prompt injection and all that. So if an employee is trying to write a prompt and if you think a breach is happening, how can you clearly show that your thing is trying to get the breach blocked or the prompt blocked and all? And how can you come out of this entire prompt narration also and say that, okay, the entire AI kind of motion is around prompt injection and all that. So this is beyond that. How can I come up beyond this and tell you the story about developer tools and anything else, right? So how can I make AI less hyped and all that? That's going to be the challenge. That's going to be the story that you're trying to tell. And more as the AI is becoming common, and we saw this shift in dev tools as well, that as more and more companies were becoming common in cloud adoption, the companies that won was more around people who could show the real value, right? Can you actually jump and do the product demos? Can you actually really know your product well? As a product marketer, I tell people that if you're trying to sell a t-shirt, I should always be ready to try that out. So if you're selling an AI product, if you're selling something in terms of AI security as a product and this thing, always try to jump in instead of messaging as a common thing. Always try to showcase the live demo of the product, showcase what all breaches it can tackle and all these things, right? So that's going to be the real differentiator between an AI PMM who is like trying to just use AI versus who knows the AI meaning in terms of his own work plus showcasing his product, right? That's what I feel.
Yeah, I think I really like that you mentioned if we don't jump the AI powered, AI, driven anything bandwagon, we might not get the traffic, we might not get the attention that we would like to have right now. Even the product that I worked for, it was AI CISO for the enterprise businesses.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we could just pick up any of the segments and also
Yeah.
keep talking and talking about it because it's also interesting and how you do it. We need more and more PMMs and cyber marketers who can redefine the playbook. And right now that I'm running my own agency, I can tell you that I have like 4 to 5 cybersecurity clients only, and people are looking for cyber marketers, right? The only advantage that I have is compared to any other agency or a product marketer is that I understand cyber. Otherwise, it would just go. So the
Right.
data, even the GTM engineering tools that's been coming or the GTM tools that's been coming, the entire play is around data and signals. So how do you map out signals if you don't understand the cybersecurity world, right? See, suppose if I'm trying to map a signal on how many DevSecOps engineers got hired. If company has hired so many DevSecOps engineers, then I would sell my product. Or if suppose someone is getting something on FedRAMP or say any other compliance status, then can I reach out? But you will know only if you know cyber, right? Only if you know your product. Otherwise, how will you do even the GTM engineering side of things? Leave the entire product marketing, which is a strategic thing. Then you'll be anyways dependent on your founders. You'll anyways dependent on your product team and all. So that's the entire thing. It's like product marketing, right? So you get the market knowledge back to the entire company.
Exactly.
There. So that's not for the marketing as a function. We are not marketers.
Yeah, I think that's very true. We need more PMMs, but we need more experienced PMM in this space so that we can actually upgrade the playbook that's already been running for years. And since AI has changed almost everything that we do, so yes, if there's one thing I hope people listening to us take away from this episode is it's cybersecurity is not confusing because you're not technical enough. It's confusing because it is actually fragmented. It's very buyer driven, emotionally charged market, and PMMs are often dropped into it without the right mental model. And that's what we are trying to change through these Cybersecurity PMM series, where we are breaking down cybersecurity market piece by piece and categories, buyers, positioning, messaging, and whatnot. And specifically in the next episode, we'll be discussing in detail around TAM, the market landscape, the market signals, GTM engineering. So thank you so much to Sachin, who is helping us out and building something that will help people who are really interested in at least joining cybersecurity as a PMM. So yeah, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Sachin.
Thank you.
So if this episode helped you feel a little bit more grounded in cyberspace, share with another PMM who's navigating this world right now. And if you want more conversations like this, follow Behind the Brief so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for listening.